Hi, I'm Valerie and welcome back to Now Gardening. Today will be all about no-dig gardening. How to start a no-dig garden fast, why it might not be the right option for you, and what I'm doing differently in my no-dig garden this year. Now, just to let you know before we get started, I left this area completely unprepped, so this is not ready for my spring planting, but I thought it would be best to show you how it looks after a year in order to explain some of the pros and cons today. Okay, so those of you who have been with me for a while now know that I have 4 different types of gardening areas. One is my no-dig area, one is an in-the-ground traditional garden. I also have galvanized steel low-raised beds and galvanized steel high-raised beds. Now I started off doing those different types of gardening areas as an experiment, but over time I've actually learned that different things grow better in different soils or different mediums, but I'm not going to go in that today. Today is going to be about no-dig gardening. Last spring and early summer I started these 2 no-dig gardening areas in less than half an hour each, and I have to admit the first thought I had was this is the best thing that anyone has ever thought of in gardening. So let me explain how you create a no-dig garden fast. But be sure to stay with me afterwards because I'm going to also explain the problems that I've had, which will help you determine whether no-dig gardening is going to be right for you or not. Also, if there's anything that I don't address in this video, be sure to leave me a comment down below and I will get back to you. Okay, so let's get to making an easy no-dig garden. The first thing that you need to do is you lay down cardboard. And this is so sweet because you literally put down the cardboard right over any kind of grass and weeds. You don't have to worry about tilling, you don't have to do anything, you just lay down the cardboard on top of it. And next you either add compost or you add a nice rich soil that's made for a vegetable garden. So I think last year, in the first one I did compost because I was going to plant potatoes over there, and in this one I did a soil that was actually for an organic vegetable garden. The other thing that I recommend whenever you're creating it is make sure the cardboard comes out about this far, so about a foot or about 30 centimeters out from the area where you're going to place the soil. I'll show you here because the grass actually starts to encroach on the no-dig bed over the course of the season. And that is really all that is required to get a no-dig garden started. And that brings me to the first problem that you might have with a no-dig garden and why it might not be right for you. And that's because that the cardboard you put down is actually to act as a shield to keep weeds and grass from growing up into your vegetable garden. And so basically it's to prevent you from having to weed. You will always have to weed to some degree. I just pulled this one, it's dropping stuff all over me, but I just pulled this big clump out right before I started videoing here. And you see it actually pulls out very easily. Soil is so loose. However, what that means is that the roots of your plants will also not go through that cardboard, at least during the first season. It takes about 6 months for cardboard to disintegrate and decompose. So what that means is you need to make sure that the soil is as deep as the roots will be of the vegetable that you're going to plant. For example, no-dig gardening tends to be great for plants with shallow roots, but less so for plants that have a really deep root system, and definitely not great for root vegetables. As I mentioned before, I did grow potatoes in the one over there, and the potatoes did okay, although they were smallish, I'll just say. They were smallish. We did have some cold weather, wet weather too. Not sure which one went into play the most, but I feel like the potatoes did not have enough room to grow a lot bigger once I dug them up. Now on the other hand, the onions, the seed onions that I planted in the same raised bed, the greens actually came up off of them, and then maybe about 3-4 weeks later I noticed that they just stopped growing, and so when I dug up the onions, they had just stalled out and had stopped growing, and they really just did not have enough room, I think, for the bulb to fully develop. On the other hand, the okra and cucumbers that I planted did wonderful. They just performed like superstars all season. The tomatoes that I planted also did great. However, this brings me to the second problem that you have with no-dig gardening. So before I go on, if this video has been helpful, please don't forget to click that like button. That will allow other new gardeners and gardeners who are also interested in no-dig gardening to be able to see my videos. Tomatoes are very heavy as they start to fruit, and because the soil is so loose, it could not support the weight, the top heavy weight of the tomatoes. And so the tomatoes actually started kind of falling over. And even once I staked them, the stakes had a tendency to just lean like this. Once again, because even though the stakes were in, the soil was not strong enough to actually support the stakes and the weight of the tomato plant. So it seemed like every day I would have to come out and kind of re-stake or re-fix the tomato plants. But other than that, the tomatoes did super along with the cantaloupes that I had. But that brings me to the third issue with no-dig gardening and why it might not be right for you, which was that this beautiful, rich soil that you have in your no-dig area is open prey for any kind of foraging animals and snails. And so in my case, I ended up in one night, I lost all of my cantaloupe except for one, and I lost, I think, 3 of my tomatoes. The snails just moved in overnight and just ate huge holes in everything. As for the foraging animals, they knocked over one of my tomato plants. I think I ended up salvaging it if I remember, but they knocked over one of my tomato plants because they were digging up under the roots in this nice loose soil looking for worms, I guess, or grubs, little snacks for them to eat at night. By comparison, my low raised bed here had 1 snail the entire season. And now for the last reason why no-dig gardening might not be right for you and what I'm going to do differently this season. When I created my no-dig bed, the very first one, I was already concerned about erosion. Our property here is on a slope, and even though these terraces are relatively flat, the property is still sloped to some degree. So that's why I put these little logs that you see out here behind me, kind of cage in the soil a little bit. However, I totally underestimated the power of our hard rains that we get here. And it seemed like after each and every rain, the bed, which was nice and fluffy and deep at the beginning, just kind of flattened out over time. In addition, I had a lot of spillage, actually even over onto the terrace below. I'll show you here. So just erosion overall was a problem for me, which leads me to what I'm going to do differently this year, which is I'm going to actually expand this no-dig area out because I'm doubling the size of my garden this year, so I am going to continue to expand the no-dig area as well. However, I'm going to use some wood that we have here on the house, some planks, and so I'm going to create a rectangle for each of my no-dig areas, and I'm going to box those in. Now that should solve the problem with erosion, but it's not going to help me with my foraging animals and with the snails. So what I'm going to do with those is, for the snails, no other option except to put a little nylon bag over anything that is susceptible. And for the foraging animals, thanks to some fellow gardener YouTubers on here, shout out to Jason and Colleen over at Clive's Conundrum and Patricia. Put their YouTube channel down in the comments down below. But thanks to their wonderful comments, I am actually going to put in a solar light solution out here in this row to help try to flash the animals whenever they come and start digging in this area and hopefully scare them off, but in a gentle, non-violent type of way. Anyway, that's it. If this video is helpful, please click the like button down below, and I hope that I will see you back next time. Thank you. Bye.